Riverdale sometimes deals with disturbing and problematic topics. We provided a list of content warnings in the episode description. Hello and welcome to Dead Ends. I'm Emily.
I'm Brenton.
And we have the Riverdale Murder Mystery Season 1 finale for you. And the episode before it.
I was like, hold on.
Penultimate. Yeah. The penultimate. I feel like that's like when they do the ads, it's like the penultimate episode. Like it's, you know what I mean? It's like, where will it go? Except this one, the murder gets solved. But then there's another mystery kind of.
Yeah.
But not really.
I mean, there's a bunch of threads for the next season. But yeah, I'm really happy that they solved it in that second to last episode.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much going on with the characters. And I mean, for a mystery show that is all about the characters, as you've mentioned, like with such good character writing, there's so much that they have to do. And it's amazing that the episode following a reveal is just as impactful, if not more impactful.
Yes.
It might be even a better episode.
It's a really good episode.
Both of these episodes are incredible. So good. Top notch. And they really stick the landing with these reveals.
You did a bad thing, Daddy, and now everybody knows.
Oh, I always remember that line. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. Yeah. Consistently impressed. And especially if you've been following us going through, well, even if you went all the way back to like Veronica Mars and Pretty Little Liars, it's way more likely that they miss on the reveal for like the actual mystery. And this show hits.
Mm-hmm.
It hits it. It's impressive. I didn't know how I assumed, I'm like, I'll probably like it again when we come back around. Then I did.
I remember we both really liked this first season.
Mm-hmm. And that 100% holds up.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly happy.
Yeah, but there's some really interesting lines. But we'll get to that in the next episode anyway.
What do you mean script-wise?
Yeah, Jughead's opener for the second one. When we get to episode 13, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll be back. Well, I mean, we might as well just jump right in, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
So, no cast this week, no production, but I have some production details for season 1 and some other things that we can talk about here, and that we might as well do up front. So, I wanted to shout out the director for each of the episodes. For this one, it is Rob Settinglands. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that quite correctly, but both of the directors of both of these episodes directed episodes of Sabrina as well. He also did episodes of the live-action Resident Evil show, randomly. And it also done episodes of The Following, which we had mentioned before, but was a Fox procedural in the mid-aughts. So got the bona fides there.
Mm-hmm.
And then across both these episodes, again, it is the same cinematographer who did 12 episodes of season 1, so just didn't do the pilot, which was Steven Jackson. So incredible stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so some background production stuff for season 1. So Jughead and Betty, I was reading an interview with Roberto Aguirre Sacasa. Don't go read this interview because it's a recap from the 100th episode. There's like a fun like things in there, but it talks about that when they started having them together, both Lily Reinhart and Cole Sprouse called them and being like, the fans aren't gonna want this like so soon, and they're not gonna pop off for the same way as like they would for like Archie and Veronica. And it's like, well, we'll see.
Incorrect.
Exactly. They also got like kind of pushback from execs of like, what is this thing with Dark Betty in episode 3? And then they tested it and it's like, well, it tested better than the pilot and the second episode. So
that's so funny.
It's so good.
I mean, it's memorable. Like you think about, we joke about Dark Betty all the time.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. It is a great decision. Very happy. And then
and what perfectionist doesn't worry about their dark side? What woman in general? I feel like there's like this really famous like quote or text post. It could even be a Tumblr post. God only knows, because you know how the internet just keeps showing you the same things over and over again for like 12 years straight.
Oh yeah.
But there's one about how, like, it might be a poem, like that someone says how women are always like at the precipice of like being afraid of like being like that I'm crazy. It's like that I always feel like I'm walking that tightrope, or like I'm right on the line, and like it would just take one thing and then I'm crazy. And like how women in particular worry about this. So I feel it's like it's a good, like, it resonates, but they make it fun.
Right, exactly. But put a wig on it. So exactly, because that encapsulates Betty so well, and everything she's worried about. So yeah, that's
what if she's not in control?
Right on the money. And
what if she enjoys being a bad person?
What does that mean then? If I enjoy that,
and it plays well like into her later arcs. Like, it actually makes sense. It's like what I really like about this episode that we're gonna recap is like. When is it this one or the next one? It's the next one when they're talking to, it's Archie talking to Betty about Veronica, being with Veronica, and it's Archie again, you can tell, not being 100% sure how to make a decision and like being wishy-washy. And I just think it's so well done that they continue this narrative with Archie, like that he's not learning his lesson. Like, he is slowly, but he's not.
Yeah,
like the characters are really well done in that way.
And it leaves it off like that he kind of has things figured out, but like still a little up in the air.
Veronica's really the only one. She was in her third act when she got here. She was like, I'm not going to be a mean girl anymore. And then she's like, I'm going to try not to be a mean girl anymore. And then, she kisses Archie. But like,
yeah,
for the most part, she's not so bad.
No, not at all. She's doing quite well. And good for Kevin. He's got a Veronica in his life.
Yes, it's very important for Kevin.
And then the show really started picking up when it was added to Netflix. So that it less than, I think, like the ratings of the show were still like, I think, good for these types of cable channels, like how we mentioned up front with like PLL and things. But the big like wave of interest came from Netflix streaming.
That's when we watched it.
Yeah. I remember it.
But they put it on there pretty early. Yes.
It was, they had made a deal with, CW had made a deal with Netflix that they would just like put them right up like after the seasons, I think. That's since lapsed. But,
yeah.
Which was very helpful, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't think I did anything else. Oh, actually, that's for the next episode.
Okay.
So, I'm going to close this tab because IMDb is running a party down thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, I kept watching it.
There we go. All right. We'll just keep that up there. I was like, I think if we see this again, then I might be way too distracted.
Not me. I'm so good at focus.
Right. You're like, they put on Scott in the background and I just zone out.
I'm in the zone now.
It's terrible watching Severance. All right. Chapter 12, Anatomy of a Murder. So this is based on a courtroom drama from 1958 that was, it's supposed to be like, it's a very famous movie, but also it's supposed to be like the most like accurate like trial film, because it was based on a book written by a justice as when like a case that he had presided over as a defense attorney.
Okay.
I want to make sure. Oh, it was a novel. All right. Wanted to make sure. I'm like, was it just the screenplay or the novel that he wrote? So it was the novel. All right, but back to the summary. We come back in on Veronica and Archie telling Betty about the gun being planted at FP's trailer. They can't find Jughead. Archie wants to tell their parents before they go to Sheriff Keller. Cut to all the parents at the Andrews house. Alice is playing devil's advocate, and Betty calls her out for asking them to investigate FP.
All parents are rightfully concerned.
I just love Alice being like, just grilling into him and just putting there, and Betty's like, get off your Iowers. Archie wants to go to Sheriff Keller, but Mary says, you broke into FP's trailer. Anything you found is inadmissible, and the parents tell them that they need the trio that they need to drop it.
Did they break in if it's Jughead's dad's trailer? Couldn't they have just been like, oh, we were at Jughead's dad's trailer. That's our friend's dad.
That is a good... See, the parents aren't thinking this much ahead. You know?
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, you went to go get something for Jughead.
Yeah. Left his backpack or something.
His beanie.
Or we were looking for Jughead.
We were looking for Jughead.
Damn.
Then we got nosy and we started looking through the cabinets.
Exactly.
Who doesn't?
Whomst among us? Later, Betty texts Archie she's worried about Jughead, and Archie's like, me too, let's go find him, and they both get up out of bed. Jughead calls his mom from a bus stop payphone and says he has a ticket to Toledo to come see her and Jellybean, but we don't hear her side of the conversation, and it sounds like he gets bad news, and eventually he's like, no, I understand, hangs up and cries. Devastating.
Yeah, his mom doesn't want him to come.
He goes back in to change his ticket to any random place but Toledo, and then he gets a ticket to Florida for the morning but can't stay in the bus lobby since it's closing for the night. Hermione is freaking out that FP killed Jason, and they need to prepare to run away. Hermione tells Veronica about bribing the mayor for the drive-in and bribing the serpents and tells her to pack a bag just in case that all comes out. Archie and Veronica go to the bus station and find it closed. Archie thinks Jughead is trying to find his mom in Ohio. Archie gets a call from Veronica wanting to vent, and Veronica's upset she wasn't invited to come find Jughead, and she tells him that he's at the only place that's open 24 hours, and they're like, damn, we really should have invited Veronica from the beginning.
Also, we've been his friends forever. Veronica's known him for 10 minutes?
All right, fair enough. But Veronica immediately solves it.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, what bad friends?
Oh, I see.
They've been his friends forever, and they didn't go, oh, Jughead loves to eat. What's open 24/7?
Maybe stop by Pops first.
Where's like the only place we ever see him besides at school?
Mm-hmm. Truly. They find him at Pops. Lo and behold, they all apologize and tell him about the gun being planted. Sheriff Keller interrogates FP. The gun matches the one that killed Jason. FP tells him about Jason coming to him to get a getaway car and cash to run away with his girlfriend. They made a deal and Jason was going to go run some drugs for them. FP figured out he was Clifford's son and wondered why he needed him for the money. So Jason told him the plan to fake his death. FP grabbed him once he reached the other side of the river. He took him to the White Worm and cast him in the basement. He reached out to Clifford for ransom. Jason got loose before Clifford came around, and FP shot him and then dumped his body in the river after the police were done sweeping it. He also says he broke into Sheriff Keller's house and stole his files, and followed Betty and Jughead to Jason's car and torched it. Sheriff Keller asked him to say if he killed Jason. The friends arrive at the station. Also, across both of these episodes, I wrote down that the industrial genre type of music that they have going here is really good. It's like playing throughout all this scene. The friends arrive at the station asking to see the sheriff and find him in the lobby. Keller asks if FP is being framed, why did he confess? The next day, FP is on the cover of the paper. At Thornhill, Polly comes down for breakfast and Penelope gives her the paper. Polly is surprised. Clifford says he went to the station and looked FP in the eye, and they'll finally have peace. At school, Veronica wonders if Hiram hired another serpent to plant the gun. Jughead is at the station getting interrogated. Kevin and Betty argue about FP being guilty, and Betty mentions Joaquin being seen with FP, and Kevin's like, don't shut up about my boyfriend. Jughead appears in the cafeteria, and everybody's like, I thought he was taking the day off. He goes up to Cheryl and apologizes. She stands up and starts hitting him. Principal Weatherby calls Jughead away. In the bathroom, Betty comes in to check on Cheryl. She tells Cheryl it's not Jughead's fault, and Cheryl vents about everybody coming to her being like, oh, you must be so relieved they found your brother's killer, and she's like, but I'm not. Jughead leaves the principal's office, and Betty walks with him and wants to prove FP's innocent. Jughead wonders who killed Jason, if not FP, since he confessed and says he's done with his father. Archie comes home to Fred. Fred says Weatherby is concerned about Jughead's safety and he should finish the semester at home. Archie wants to fight for Jughead and wants him to stay at their house and school, but Fred worries that this will all catch up to Archie. And then they fight while Jughead overhears on the stairs, who goes to leave and says he'll sleep in the garage.
Fred's also just like the worst fucking dad in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, who the fuck is this man? Does he have a twin? Is there a body snatching?
I guess this is like when Fred's up against the wall and he starts worrying. He like can't, he gets selfish, territorial, I guess. He's
Protective?
Not looking out for what?
He's protective over Archie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's like a flip. Betty wakes up to noises in her house. She goes downstairs and finds Alice up with a gun. They go to investigate the basement and find their deadbeat dad. Or at least Betty's deadbeat dad. And Alice's deadbeat husband. He shows them Sheriff Keller's files he stole. He wants to destroy the evidence. Alice is like, why did you do this? Al says he was worried that this would come back to Polly and they would figure out their connection to the Blossoms. And Betty's like, our connection? You mean Polly and Jason? And Hal's like, well, your the connection, you mean that they killed our great-grandpappy? Which, love it. Hal says your great-grandpappy wasn't just murdered by the Blossoms, he was a Blossom. After the murder, he took a new name, Cooper. They figure out Polly and Jason are technically cousins of some sort. They wonder what the Blossoms would do to keep Jason and Polly apart. The Blossoms are all
quite contraire.
Exactly.
What's the Blossom family theme, apparently?
Keeping the bloodline pure. The Blossoms are all woken up by a late-night visit from the Coopers. They want to take Polly home, and Alice tells them about their family relations. Penelope says nothing could be more purely Blossom than those babies, and Clifford's like, what are they, third cousins? Don't be prudes.
That's my favorite line is he's like, they were what, third cousins? And I'm like...
It's cool, man.
Clifford, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, why?
I think we had talked about on a previous episode, like that, keeping how they keep bloodlines pure back in the days and medieval days and things. Clifford
fits in nice with Veronica's twincest thing, you know?
Man, they just got to work it in somehow in these teen shows.
They really, teen television is like weirdly obsessed with horrific family relationships.
I haven't seen enough like soaps, like adult soaps to know if this is where that comes from.
I mean,
I wonder.
It probably also uses this.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that before.
A lot of the like, oh, they're dead and they're not is a daytime soap vibe.
Right.
Or she had a twin.
Exactly.
And the twin is the one that's dead.
Right. Or, if it's like Twin Peaks, it's a matter of convenience of like, damn, well, we killed off our dead body for the entire series as this really good actor, so we gotta find a way to bring her back in. I just like they do that from the jump. They're like, oh, we messed up. The Clippers go to leave with Polly, and Penelope threatens Betty, specifically.
Very odd.
Alice also comes in and is like, sorry to interrupt the witching hour at Thornhill. Mm-hmm. Also, how'd they get through the gate? Archie wakes up Jughead.
Well, they're related.
That's right. They knew the key. Archie wakes up Jughead to go to Pop's. They meet with Mary, who went to the station and pretended to be FP's lawyer to get info. FP never budged from his story. Mary asks who Joaquin is because he was FP's one phone call. She tells Jughead to visit his dad because this might be his last chance. Jughead visits FP and breaks down thinking he was getting his act together. Jughead says he was always looking out for him, FP was always looking out for himself and asks if he's sorry. FP says, I did what I had to do, and I'm sorry I got caught. Jughead goes to leave, and FP tells him, never come back.
Go on, get.
Yeah, go on now, run.
Don't look back.
Archie catches Veronica up on all the happenings. They go to Joaquin with Kevin. Kevin is upset and wants to know... Oh, sorry. I'm going to turn off my ringer here. And wants to know if FP killed Jason. Joaquin says, yes, I think so. Veronica asks if he saw him kill him, and he says no. Archie asks, why did he do it? And Joaquin's like, well, on July 11th, I got a call from FP that he needed help with the cleanup job at the White Worm. I was getting a Slurpee. And then met FP in the basement, which is usually off limits. He came and found Jason's body and helped FP clean up the mess, and they stored this body in the freezer. Veronica asks if this was on behalf of Hiram. Joaquin's like, I overheard a conversation between FP and Mustang about some rich guy. And then they're like, who's Mustang? It's like the guy Archie got in a fight with. And then they tell Joaquin they have to see Mustang. Polly's back home, and her and Betty enjoy a moment of peace. Jughead calls Betty and says, you're right, my dad is hiding something. Joaquin and the other three go to see Mustang. They go to his apartment and find the door unlocked. Archie finds his body in the bathtub with needles and it looks like to be an overdose. Joaquin and Kevin break for it, and Kevin's like, call my dad. Polly shows up along with Hermione and Fred. Keller says it's likely an overdose and asks how Archie knew he lived there. Before he can answer, a deputy comes up with a bag of money with HL on it. Keller asks why Hermione's initials are on the bag. Polly shows up. Police show up along with Hermione and Fred. Polly is not in this scene. I'm so sorry. And then Keller asks why Hermione's initials are on the money bag. Veronica says it wasn't her mom, and Hermione shuts her down and says, we won't talk until we get an attorney. Archie and Fred go to leave. Fred wants Archie to drop this so he doesn't get hurt, and Archie says he understands. The Lodges arrive home, and Hermione breaks down crying. Kevin sees Joaquin off at a bus station and kisses him goodbye. Before Joaquin leaves, he tells Kevin that there's something else. Jughead tells Betty that FP isn't good at lying. He's been lying to Jughead his whole life, so he can always tell. And he can definitely tell he's hiding something. Cheryl comes in to talk to her mom. She asks why her and Clifford were arguing before her and Jason left for the river. Penelope says Clifford was nurturing Jason to run the business, but he couldn't stomach it. Cheryl asks what Jason couldn't handle. Jughead and Betty update the murder board, and they leave only Hiram and the Blossom parents as suspects. Cheryl says Clifford must have been mad at Jason because of the business and asks what Jason was running away from. Penelope grabs her hand, leads her outside. Penelope angrily yells at her for accusing her parents of murder. Penelope takes her to the maple syrup barn and says, here's the dirty truth. Alice runs the blue and gold like the Navy and goes over all the recent details with Jughead and Betty and says things are too tidy. Betty gets a call from Kevin to meet up. Cut to them in the woods. FP's call to Joaquin was to forget about their contingency plan, and they find a bag in the bramble, and it contains Jason's jacket. The friends, this is also the scene where Alice calls Sheriff Keller Sheriff Clueless.
10 out of 10.
The friends, minus Veronica, wonder how Jason's jacket would help FP when it would actually just point back to FP as a suspect. Veronica arrives and says that the bag of money points to Hiram and FP probably pulled the trigger. Betty says, no, I'm not giving up on this yet, and puts the Letterman jacket on Archie and Jason's Letterman jacket on him, and Archie's like, Betty, this is weird. Betty finds a hole in the jacket pocket and finds a USB drive inside it. They plug the USB into a laptop and watch the video, but we can't, as the audience can't see it, and it's bad enough that it shocks them all. Betty makes a call to Cheryl and tells her she has to get out of the house, and Cheryl says, I understand, thank you. We then get this incredible scene of her going from stoic crying to then walking down the stairs slow-mo. She walks downstairs to her parents having dinner, and she says the line, you did a bad thing, Daddy, and now everyone knows. Alice brings Sheriff Keller and Mary McCoy the USB. The video is Jason tied to a chair in the White Worm basement. Mustang taunts him, and then Clifford comes in. He takes the engagement ring out of Jason's pocket, then shoots him in the head. FP confessed because of the night of his arrest. Clifford visited him and said that Jughead would suffer the same fate if FP didn't confess. Sheriff Keller tells Jughead he's still involved with covering up the murder, so FP will stay in jail. Veronica comes home and apologizes for thinking Hiram would kill Jason. Hermione says, it's okay, I have good news. Your father is coming home. Archie is at the house and tells Mary that his friends need him. She tearfully hugs him goodbye. The police show up at Thornhill. Jughead's narration asks why Clifford would have done it. Sheriff Keller pulls up the front door, and Sheriff Keller and the police pull up to the front door. Cheryl and Penelope point towards the maple syrup barn. The police open up the barn door and find Clifford hanging. They see the maple syrup barrels knocked over and drugs spilling out. The end.
Well, Sheriff Clueless, are you ready?
The moniker would fit with some of my predictions.
Not in this one, though. You knew this one.
That's right.
So this episode is why, in an earlier episode, when Veronica is having dinner at Thornhill, and Clifford makes a comment to Veronica like, oh, is it hard your dad not being around? Or because he's a criminal or whatever. And it's like, like, it's very, I was like, oh, that's good.
They really have it there. There's also, if you don't want Twin Peaks spoilers, skip ahead by about a few minutes here. Okay, are you gone? You still here? Last chance for spoilers. It's also, and they also do another good thing of I think calling back to Twin Peaks of his hair going white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They do. So Jughead is not narrating this episode at the beginning. There's only a couple of episodes that he doesn't start by narrating in this season. I was very taken aback. I know it's because it's kind of like a continued, but I thought that was interesting. But this one, I feel like the episode kind of plays around lies and obligation. And obviously Alice's only obligation is to do a good story. So she has no morals, and we love her. but specifically FP and his choices, and it goes more into it in the next episode, but that he's doing this for Jughead and for his people and his community that has been with him even when other people in this community, in this larger community, have judged him or ridiculed him or pushed him aside. He's always had a home with the serpents, it seems. Right. And he will not betray his people. Why Joaquin is like the one person who ended up being his buddy? Odd. I personally wouldn't necessarily want to use a high schooler. That's just me. I don't trust him. Yeah,
why wouldn't you call Mustang, who seems to have been also leading this entire thing, to like clean this up? Or anybody else? There's another.
Do we really know why Mustang died?
Oh, Clifford kills him. Okay. It's in the narration at the beginning of chapter 13.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, the Jughead mentions that Clifford had come back and cleaned him up.
I think it's interesting to look at FP's confession and how much truth is actually in the lie. Like, all of it's true except for who pulled the trigger.
Right.
I mean...
That he was called in to clean up. He pulls in Joaquin to clean us up and cover it up. And also dumping the body and everything. So, yeah, he's skirting around the truth.
And he confesses to anything that doesn't have a rationale. So like they're like, oh, and what about the files? And he's like, sure, I took them, even though he knows nothing about this, because he's trying to make sure he covers his bases so that Jughead is protected.
Yeah,
just it's well done.
Oh, very well done. And I think having Clifford we already mentioned how they like seed Clifford in the previous ones, but it's someone that you could get to. That it's like he was potentially doing it because. One of you maybe you wouldn't have guessed that the Blossoms were actually running drugs, but you knew something's wrong with the Blossoms and that what their like business is built upon and things like
the syrup wasn't so sweet.
That's right. And also that he had contacted the serpents to kind of do his bidding and things and go beat up. Like he was not the only person, and potentially put Hiram in jail. So you knew that they were up to like shady shit. So you could potentially map it back to Jason's murder, even if you didn't have all the like puzzle pieces to like fit that together. And that he would rather kill his son than let any of that get out.
But he's totally okay with him marrying his cousin.
Right.
Also,
priorities.
Hal being like, I have to get rid of this evidence because not because I stole it, but because I don't want them connecting it to Polly makes no fucking sense. No. And they believe him? I'm like, how, you weirdo motherfucker. One, your daughter's dating her cousin and you're not going to tell her?
Right.
Like, we were talking about this and Brenton goes, I kind of get like with the, in Pretty Little Liars with the Melissa and Jason thing, because while they're siblings and it's worse in that department, it's about an infidelity and they don't necessarily know. Whereas in this, there's no infidelity. It was just a fight.
Yeah. And I don't understand why you could be like, we are the Coopers. We used to be Blossoms, but we're so much better than them. Like they backstabbed us in the back that we turned our back on them. I don't understand the need to have a secret of like where the Coopers came from.
It's very odd.
But it plays at least into the what I think it's so good about following up in the next episode is the ways, the like sins of the family, or like the things that like families won't acknowledge, and like things that like people and like adults in the town have not come to terms with, just rotting everything else around them. It's, again, I mean, other places do it, but like pulling in from David Lynch work of like Blue Velvet and like Twin Peaks, of like the seemingly nice town with like the ominous like underbelly underneath. It's the finger in the grass at the beginning of Blue Velvet, of these things that you don't talk about under the facade that is actually makes the town like so much more rotten. And then in this case, it comes back to roost on all the kids.
And silence kills. Silence kills them.
And like why Betty's the way she is, and why like Jughead has to go through what he goes through.
Why Archie's the way he is. He's so Pollyanna and righteous, and at the same time can't make a decision to save his life when it really counts.
Right.
For himself. He can do it for other people.
Yes, because he shows up really well for everyone in these 2 episodes. Especially to Jughead going to the mat. Like, he is the definition of a good friend in this, of like, I don't understand why we can't like
keep Jughead.
Exactly. Like, he's the one hurting it, like, right now. And then and then Fred in this instance of being the adult that's failing.
Well, and also Fred just randomly has a DUI.
Okay. That's next episode, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. We'll get to that in a minute. I have some feelings. Okay, I wanted to talk about Cheryl, because I think Cheryl is the queen of this episode, as per usual.
Right. And then the way this impacts Cheryl.
Well, and on grief specifically, they really have her portray grief really well. And the idea that she's angry and she's upset and she doesn't understand why Evan keeps saying, aren't you so relieved? And her parents are acting so relieved. And she's like, this doesn't make any fucking sense because Jason's still dead. I am still sad.
Yeah.
And I think it's so well done and it's so well thought out. Because a lot of times in television, you'll get that. And then they have a resolution. It's like, well, the person's still dead.
And the way
it doesn't feel good. She knows there's something rotten in this.
Yeah, and the way people like talk to her, that it's as if a switch should be flipped. It's like, oh, we should, like, everything's over for you now. You're good, right?
Well, and I think it shows. So Cheryl, while she can be a bitch, we love her.
Yeah.
She needs the truth. Cheryl is very much like Veronica in that sense, where she needs the truth. And so she's asking her mom, she's asking her dad, she's willing to jeopardize her safety to confront them. Cheryl's like, oh, like, Dad, you did a bad thing. She's not like, oh, I'm going to get out because Betty told me to. She's like, Dad, you did a bad thing.
And even when she goes to her mom, who's absolutely horrible, is like practically begging her of like, just please, what is happening in this family?
And she just gaslit. She also really wants to keep Polly when they're leaving. And I'm like, is it because Cheryl's lonely? Is it because Polly has Jason's twins? Her babies? They're not Jason's twins. I mean, I guess they are, but...
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? They're not... they're children, not his twin sibling. But that's how I was like, oh, it's coming off weird.
Okay, I see what you're getting.
The English language flipped away from me just momentarily.
And I was of no help because I'm like, yeah, that works.
I'm like, no, it doesn't, but okay. I'm just going to sit here and be confused, but it's fine. No, I think it's really interesting, because like when you think through Cheryl's motivations and kind of what she's doing and how isolating it is to be Cheryl Blossom, and the idea that she had this built-in one other person who was her person and understood. And she doesn't have that, so she's clinging to whatever's the next best thing, but she knows she can't cling to her parents.
Yeah.
Because they're awful.
Yeah, absolutely. The worst of the worst.
But then she takes charge in the next episode, and I love that.
Yeah.
The end, not how we get there. My other notes on this are Jughead just being like, my dad's a horrible liar. And like, I think that's funny.
I'm like, this is such a good way of doing this.
I wish they'd seeded that earlier, though, because you know when he's like, oh, I believe him, that he's not involved. I wish because you kind of catch that Jughead's not sure.
Right.
Or that we don't know if Jughead's lying to Betty. Like, I wish they made it clear that Jughead didn't believe his dad.
Right.
And maybe they did.
True.
Maybe I just I wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't. It felt like he did.
Or he wanted to.
Exactly.
But if he'd been like, my dad has a tell, and then he'd kind of like halfway done the tell or something, then it would have, you know what I mean? Like we could have.
Yeah. Yeah, just minor things of like, even like, Dad, you're lying. Like, you didn't go do that, or blah, blah, like something small, for us to pick up on. But because that's a good point. Because I mean, he spent the entire season of like believing that FP could be better.
Yeah, and was a liar. It's.
Yeah. And in a sense, he's still doing that here, of thinking that FP wouldn't actually be the murderer. But it is at least a fun like way of being like, no, we need to investigate this more, and like snapping Jughead out of it and getting him back in the game. I at least think in terms of like plot mechanics, it's fun. It's a fun way of like deflating that tension.
My favorite thing about this episode, though, is the backpack or the jacket, putting the jacket on Archie. Archie's like, this is weird. And then Betty finds the flash drive in the lining. But I think it's really funny because these kids are just constantly touching evidence with their bare hands. This is just like Pretty Little Liars. And they get smarter in Pretty Little Liars kind of as it goes on. But every time they touch something, I said, oh, God, this is going to be when they get caught. They never get caught for their fucking fingerprints.
No. Mm-mm.
These dumbest boards children.
Yeah.
That's my final. That and that Kevin, Veronica, and Archie are the dumbest motherfuckers in Riverdale. Because they're like, Joaquin, you're going to take us to the guy who sells heroin's hotel room or motel room.
The one I got in a fight with.
Like, are you out of your fucking mind?
Did you not learn your lesson?
What do you think you're going to get from him?
Yeah, I don't know. But I don't think I have anything else.
There isn't as much. I mean, like, thematically, it's kind of covered. It's very on the nose. It's in the episode.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just...
It's really wrapping up a good mystery.
Exactly.
It feels very satisfying.
Yeah.
There are very few endings of things that feel satisfying. And the end of this season, this whole thing feels satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Including shows that the same creator and writer has directed and wrote.
Yes. Don't get me started on the end of Sabrina.
Oh, boy.
Uh-huh. I remembered that the other day.
Yeah. I was thinking of the original Sin, but yeah.
Uh-huh. But this has a very satisfying ending.
Yes. Very much so. All
right. Ready to take it into home?
Let's do it. Chapter 13, The Sweet Hereafter. So, this is also what they refer to as the afterlife in Sabrina. So we'll come back around on that when we cover Sabrina. But then it's also the name, they said, at least on fandom, this was based off of the name of an award-winning film from 97, but it's based off a book where there's a bus accident, there's an accident like with children, and it kills off most of the children in town.
Jesus Christ.
Sounds absolutely devastating. And I mean, it's an acclaimed film, at least, but I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's rough. And then our director for this episode is Lee Tolan Krieger, who also directed the movie Age of Adeline with Blake Lively. I never saw that movie, but it was also like executive. Is also like a producer for like other like Netflix shows, so Shadow and Bone, Sabrina, Dead Boy Detectives, and You, and also did some. Oh, it looks like one episode of Dead Boy Detectives, funnily enough, and only a couple episodes of Shadow and Bone, and then had directed a couple episodes of all those things too.
Oh, I love Shadow and Bone, but I also loved Dead Boy Detectives, and they fucking canceled it.
I know, it's really sad.
They keep taking away the things I like.
Yeah.
That feels very apropos for the world we live in.
They're really good at that, unfortunately.
Men. I blame men.
Yeah.
I don't know who made this decision, but I can assume.
It's yes, very much so. And KJ Apa broke his hand punching the ice in this episode. Except he was punching they had like foam between the ice. And he's like, yeah, it was just cold. So he's just punching the foam. And then didn't realize, since it was cold, that he had apparently just like broken his hand doing that. So the cast that he has later is
it's like, real.
Yeah.
I almost wondered because they had it very specific. Like usually when you get a cast in a show, it's just like the around the hands, and his was like these two fingers were like in specific spots. It was like, I don't know if it was like a finger gun or like there was something weird, and I was like, oh, ow.
Yeah. So real life ow. And then there is at one point an idea that the end of this season, this was before it started taking off, and that would end with the reveal of Sabrina, and they would do like second season is like the afterlife of Sabrina, which is like a horror comic that they wrote, and it's like, or sorry, Afterlife of Archie, which is like a horror comic around the Archie comics characters that Sabrina's in. So that was the original idea for season 2, and they're like, it's more of like a crime show, so we'll just keep it as that for now.
Interesting.
Wink.
Choices. I love magic. You can put magic in everything.
Exactly. We'll see if that hangs. All right, but on to the summary. And this is where we had to pause the episode from laughing too hard.
I was like, you can't do this. This isn't allowed.
It opens on Jughead's narration. It was a cliffhanger. You can't do that.
I was in utter shock. Like, I don't even think I was laughing. I was just like, no.
It's so good.
No. It's not allowed. Jesus Christ.
Oh, man. That writer was just like, this is the best thing I'm ever going to do.
Do you think they felt like a little nervous submitting it, though? They're like, what if they don't think it's like, what if they think it's too cheap of a joke?
Probably.
But when else are you going to use it?
Yeah, exactly. You got to use it now. So good. Oh, I also forgot to mention that the exec producer, Greg Berlanti, was the one who was like, because they were nervous about having the murder reveal being the penultimate episode and not the finale. And V was like, no, you need to keep it in the penultimate so then you can like have it be about the characters and show this wasn't just about like trying to resolve a murder mystery, which really smart that it worked out that way for sure. Very smart notes. But back to the summary. We cut between Alice and Jughead's narration. We find out that the Blossom's true business was transporting heroin from Montreal. Who else had business in Montreal? Damn, Montreal, the crime capital of Canada. Clifford killed Mustang and planted the money to point the direction toward Hiram. Mayor wanted Sheriff Keller to crush every last piece of corruption. Sheriff Keller interrogates FP to ask who is selling drugs on behalf of Clifford. He says, FP, if you feed me names, the DA will give you a reduced sentence. FP says serpents only sell dime bags of weed. Keller threatens him with 20 years of jail. Archie finds his dad looking upset in the kitchen. Fred is just shaken by the revelations about the town. Archie says he's dealing with it. He's dealing with it as best as he can, but all his friends are still in it, and Fred says we're all still in it. Hermione tells Smithers that Hiram is due in a month, and Veronica doesn't sound happy, and Hermione is like getting all things like prepared for Hiram to come. The Coopers pretend to be normal, like everything is okay, and we see Betty is clenching her hands enough to bleed. She vents to Archie about her family not dealing with their stuff, or else it'll all come up again. Also, so many scenes of them in the snow in this episode. Gorgeous. Veronica wants her and Archie to tell Betty about their situationship. Archie doesn't want to, but Veronica says she will. Archie and Betty get, that the term situationship didn't exist yet because it's not voiced in this episode.
That they're not using situationship or friends with benefits. I guess you wouldn't say that as a teenager.
Yeah, they didn't. There was no term for it in 2017.
Well, there definitely was. There was literally a movie, Friends with Benefits. They were probably like trying not to say "fuck buddy" on television.
Oh, there you go.
For children or teenagers.
This is kids programming.
Jesus.
Especially the sexy scenes later in the episode.
Yeah, good lord.
Get the whole family around. Archie and Betty get called into Principal Weatherby's, and Mayor McCoy wants them to be represented at the town's Jubilee celebration. Archie asks about Jughead, too, and Mayor McCoy's like, I don't want to say it's because he's poor. I
know, she says, I like Jughead.
We all love Jughead. It's just that his dad might be going to jail. And it's confusing to feature him. Betty tells Jughead that she won't go up without him, and Jughead's like, I really don't want to go up anyway. Jughead tells the friends about the sheriffs threatening FP for names. Betty is going to write an article for the Register about the drugs and everything that happened, and the truth needs to be acknowledged. Veronica says, speaking of the truth, she's like, and then Archie's like, we kissed a couple times. And Betty's like, who cares? I'm with Jughead now. Go with God. Penelope and Cheryl are in funeral attire. Turns out that Clifford was buried alone. Penelope says our family is cursed ever since the fratricide, and opines maybe Clifford took the smart way out. Archie asks Betty again if she's okay with him and Veronica dating, and Betty's like, yep, I'm fine. Archie's like, Veronica's amazing, but a little part of me always thought, and Betty's like, we found such good soulmates, aren't we? And we can just be friends. Isn't that good, Archie? Immediate diffusal. Fred comes into work and finds his crew replaced by Hermione. She fired the serpents because of optics, and he's pissed because they stood by them. Hermione wants to buy Fred out of the business, and Fred's like, we'll make the offer in writing. Josie reviews Archie's song and it's like, it's great. And he's like, can we perform it at the Jubilee? She's like, no.
Absolutely not.
It's a beautiful song.
Girl. She's like, this is my show. You are lucky to be there.
You might have strong-armed your friends into getting you to talk about performing this song, but you take your depressing song somewhere else.
This isn't about you.
Uh-huh. She's like, I understand you and your friends have been through hell, but the Jubilee is for the entire town. Alice and Hal like Betty's article, and they're like, it's the best thing you've written, but we won't publish it. It's like, you're too involved. And Betty's like, you're just as bad as Mayor McCoy. And Alice is like, well, there's been attacks on Southside people. They're going after the serpents, and we don't want you becoming a target. Veronica finds Cheryl in the locker room. Cheryl passes Veronica the torch to lead the Vixens, a.k.a. her HBIC t-shirt, and reassures Veronica she's fine. Veronica tells Betty it was weird seeing Cheryl like that. Betty posted her article on the Blue and Gold website to defy her parents. Veronica asks Betty if she's sure she's okay with her and Archie, and Betty's like, yes. Both of you stop asking me. Polly comes in, and Betty says she should come back to school. Archie and Jughead come home and find a caseworker for Jughead. Fred offered for Jughead to stay at their home, but apparently Fred has a DUI on his record from when Mary left. A Southside family is offering to foster Jughead, and he'll be moved over there by the end of the week. Archie visits FP to tell him about Jughead's situation, and FP says the serpents are innocent and I can't betray them. Jughead is scrappy, but you and Betty gotta stick by him, okay? Veronica goes to eat with Jughead, who's sitting alone at school, and she's like, I think she does it. Does she do it like we're not so different, you and I? Because they never hang out together. Cheryl then comes over and apologizes to Jughead for hitting him and gives her spider brooch. Uh-oh. Kevin runs over and says, come see this, it's bad. Oh, wait, no. Veronica said, Jughead's like, wait, why are we the same? Is it because my dad's going to prison and your dad's getting out? Love that one. We see Betty's locker is defaced with her article, and it says, go to hell, serpent slut. And what we find out is pig's blood. Archie vents to Fred about all this shit going on, and they just can't seem to win. Betty and Jughead discuss the impossible situation they're facing, and he wants to just stop fighting it, but Betty says, no, you belong in Riverdale. We need to, fight to keep you here. It's your home, too. Veronica comes home. Hermione asks if her and Archie are getting closer, and Veronica's like, yes. It's like, okay, well, what I want you to do is get Archie to help convince Fred to sell. And Veronica's like, oh, okay, I'll just sexually manipulate my boyfriend. And Hermione's like, perfect. And Veronica's like, I was joking. And it's like, what's gotten into you? And Hermione says, your father and Fred, well, they just won't get along. Betty comes home and finds Polly confessed to Alice about what happened at school after intense grilling. And then Betty grills Alice back and asks why FP said that Hal and her got in an argument at the school dance all that years ago. And Alice says it's not her business. And Betty says, Dad kept a secret that almost destroyed us. How many are you keeping? Cheryl asks to stay at home, and Penelope says no. And Cheryl's like, it's so tough, doing this. I feel terrible. And Penelope yells at her that she doesn't care. Alice visits Betty in her room. She vents to her about the night of the homecoming dance. She told Hal that she was pregnant, and they disagreed on how to handle it. The next day, Alice was sent away to the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, and 5 months later, Betty's brother was born, and the sisters arranged an adoption. Betty embraces her, and they cry. Betty catches up to friends, minus Jughead on her long-lost brother. Jughead calls her from Southside High. That's where he is now, and he says that's where he belongs because no one wants him. And Betty tells the friends they have to go get him. And Southside High is there's metal detectors and all the lockers are defaced.
If you've seen the movie Bring It On All or Nothing with Hayden Panettiere, it's the school she gets transferred to. So she has to go through the metal detector. This is a great bit in the movie. Mm-hmm. And they have the metal detector goes off because she goes through, and then the police officer doing it goes over her ears, and she's like, it's my earrings, which, as we know, don't set those off. But anyway, and then it goes down further, and she's like, it's my necklace. And then she's like, my belly button ring. And then it does it around her crotch, and she's like, they're my keys, you perv. And it's a bit from the movie, and
it's pretty good. It is Hayden Panettiere in this.
Yes, it's Hayden Panettiere. So obviously she plays it really well because cheerleader is kind of her vibe at that point.
And Veronica literally makes a reference to her.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. You saved the cheerleader, and you saved the town.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we see serpents start to mess with Jughead, or at least Southside kids. And then all the friends arrive at Southside High to try and find him. But then they find Jughead just chumming it up with everybody and having a good time. Honestly, Jughead's doing just fine. Jughead catches up with all the friends outside, and Betty vows to not let them be split apart. They hug as Archie stares at them, and Archie says they're soulmates. Good for them, right? And Archie goes to say something when Veronica gets a text from Cheryl that she's going to be with Jason. And the friend's like, wait a minute, what? They all rush to Sweetwater River. Okay, this might be the pinnacle of the show. This scene is so good and looks amazing. Like the shots of Cheryl way out on the ice, the shots like when Archie's just a blip running, like when you get the side shots of him running along the ice too. And it's so tense. They rush to Sweetwater River and find her trying to break a hole in the ice. They call to her. She stands, turns, and then falls right in. That's really good too. The friends run out to get to her. Archie finds her under the ice and punches it to try and break it. Cheryl sees a vision of zombie Jason reach out to her. Archie breaks through and pulls her out, and he gives her CPR, and she eventually starts breathing again.
The old style of CPR. I don't think you cover people's noses anymore. I'm not 100% on that. Someone else would have to. I don't know if you do the mouth part at all anymore, if you just do the chest compressions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not CPR certified. Don't take this from me, but I feel like that's what it is now, is it's just the chest compressions.
Well, my certification from 15 years ago tells me 16 years ago. Ooh, good Lord. Don't choke around me. That's why we got the
life back. Mm-hmm. But that's for choking. That's not CPR.
Oh yeah, that's
fair.
A
Heimlich. Oh no.
A lot of work to do.
I feel a little unsafe.
Cheryl warms up by the fire at the lodge residence as Veronica takes care of her. Hermione wonders why Cheryl is there. Veronica talks to her quietly. It's like she's had a really bad day. Cheryl says, I'll warm up and then go home. And Hermione's like, fine. Hermione is just turned into the worst.
All the parents suck now.
Yeah. Betty gets ready for the Jubilee, and Alice says, don't worry about the speech.
And she has another cover girl. It's always when Betty's doing something that we get like the cover really girl ad.
Cover girl, yeah. And then Betty vents about Jughead moving. Archie attempts to play guitar with a cast on his arm. Veronica asks Archie why he was looking at Betty and Jughead like he likes Betty. Archie's like, well, I like them just as friends. In that moment I saw them, I realized I want to be like that with you. Veronica says she likes that and kisses him. The Pussycats arrive, and Josie says, I reconsidered your song. We're going to play it. The Jubilee kicks off, and Mayor McCoy introduces the Pussycats, and then Josie comes out and is like, we're going to be singing Archie's song. Also, I should have double-checked, because it's 75 years. I didn't remember if it was 75 years of, like, Archie comics also. Jughead visits FP to convince him to give people up, and FP says, I've thought about both options and they suck. Jughead says he'll be okay. The foster family is nice and Southside High is just a high school, I can live with it. FP says, I've done some bad things and I don't know what'll happen when it goes to trial, but you'll need to be there for your mom and Jellybean. Jughead says he'll do his best. The performance finishes and Betty goes to give her speech as Jughead shows up last minute. Audience cheers. Betty says Riverdale is made up of people, including, like, it's naming off all the high-profile people, like the mayor and the sheriff, and it's like, but also including of, like, FP and Jughead, and we banished him. Clifford was also Riverdale. We have to face what has happened in this town and what we've done. We can't continue to keep secret like this. We must do better. We have to, like, acknowledge them, process them, come to terms with it, and, like, take actions to make the town a better place. Jughead starts clapping, and eventually the whole crowd gives her a standing ovation. Hermione stops Fred, and he says he won't sell. Hermione's like, but it's in your best interest. And he's like, well, what's the best for the town? I'll see you at work, partner. The friends all get milkshakes together at Pop's. Penelope comes home and finds Cheryl standing in front of the fireplace with the candelabra. The room smells like gasoline, and Cheryl drops the candelabra on the gas, setting the room ablaze. Jughead and Betty go to FP's trailer. Jughead tells her he loves her, and she says it back. Archie and Veronica sneak into her penthouse as Imagine Dragons plays for their sex scene. And then we also get cuts to Jughead and Betty about to have sex, but then there's a knock at the trailer door, and they think it's Alice. Jughead opens it up to find a group of servants, and they're like, your dad didn't name names, didn't give us up, and the serpents take care of their own, and as long as he's gone, we've got your back. And the leader hands Jughead a serpent's jacket, and we'll learn this person's name in the next season. And Jughead happily puts it on, and Betty looks at him like, Juggy, what? Cheryl and Penelope stand outside Thornhill while it burns, and Penelope hits Cheryl, and Cheryl's like, hee hee hee. The next morning, Archie meets Fred at Pop's for breakfast, after he says goodbye to Veronica in the morning, of course. Archie goes to the bathroom to wash his hands, and he's just a happy boy. He hears yelling outside.
To which I go, how do you wash your hands with that cast? That's literally what I was saying, and then I was like, oh no, I remember what happens.
Yep. And he hears yelling outside and goes and finds a guy in a black ski mask holding a gun to Pop Tate. Fred stands up and the guy points a gun at Fred. Archie runs in front and it cuts to outside the diner as the guy runs off. We see Fred on the ground, shot as Archie holds him. The end.
What I really like about this episode is it plays with that whole season. We've had this theme of like light and dark, like opposites, light and dark, good and bad, like community, solitude, and then Cheryl does ice and fire. Like it's all these like really cool, like very like dramatic opposites. And like it's such a good, like, instead of Cheryl being reborn by like fire, it's like the opposite. Like she kind of cracks and she has her Elsa moment, if you will, and then she lights everything on fire. And I just think that's so good.
It's really good. Yeah, that's
and Cheryl like
nice.
Coming back from the ashes, you know, she's like, "Oh, I'm in charge now, mommy." Like
we're burning it all down.
The only way we're gonna be able to purify this is if we burn it.
And I think coming off of like what like the through line of like which I think is like kind of cements the background of this episode of like what Betty's saying. It's like that we, as a town, we have to acknowledge all the hurt and terrible things that have happened here, because if not, then we can't work to do better. We can't work to fix things that are broken. And Cheryl is like, we're going to start anew.
Yeah, you have to take things all the way down. Like she's burning it down.
Yeah.
There will be no foundation to build on.
We have to go somewhere else and we have to build it up again.
I will say like Betty's little righteous, like very apropos, but like righteous speech. I'm like, I give those lectures all the time and nobody claps. I mean, you know, usually Herman's my only witness, but
what am I doing?
Sometimes you're working.
Oh, okay.
You know, but I thought it was funny. I was like, oh yeah, like let's get him. And that Mary McCoy is like not clapping, and you're like, oh, she's corrupt.
It's so good. I think just as a foundational thing for, I mean, one of these mystery shows, especially of like the murder in a small town and the people doing corrupt things, or like the secrets that bury people from, or like prevent people from helping one another and things. Just to give like such a like cementing speech of like the only way to be able to process and figure out what we need to do is like acknowledge what the hell is happening here. And that's like, you know, just real world like politics in general too. You have like, if you can't agree on like what things have happened or what things are wrong or broken, that you can't make steps to remedy it.
It's just broken. It doesn't work. You gotta fix it.
Right. That goes from everything of like healthcare, and like think of like healthcare in the US as like an example of like, if we don't all agree that it's broken, that we're like that like
this is bad,
exactly, that like ambulances should not cost this much, then how are you supposed to be able to fix it? And even, or like things like reparations, if you can't understand the harm that we've done to like the Black community for you know, centuries now, then how are you supposed to be able to fix the like systemic racism at the rot of the country? It's such it's so meaty and good. And I love that Betty is just like, she's struggling against all the systems that are like, no, you need to like just go back to acting normal and be happy that this like bad thing that like got out in the light is over. Like Hal's even back in the house. It's such a good encapsulation of it.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, and things go back to normal, or things are returning to a normal, except for Cheryl's like, oh, Veronica, you can be the vixen. I'm going to burn this all down. Well, actually, it was a different reason, but now she's like, I'm going to burn this all down. I also was thinking a lot about Jughead to like sheds his skin, if you will. He takes off his beanie to say, I love you. I think that's important. He's just Jughead. There's no beanie. He's not hiding behind anything. And then he does that, and then he's handed a jacket to become a serpent. So it's like he has like a full transition. And like Betty's like, I thought I was going to get like just Jughead, but now I get Jughead with a different set of armor.
Right, that's true. It's like now I have to figure out who this like new persona is essentially.
What does that mean? And does it matter?
Right.
And also, is Betty, even though she gave this lecture, is she part of the problem by judging the serpents?
Yeah. Right. Because she's immediately being like, "Oh no, Jug," and you can't go to Southside High, which I understand from like a.
We don't want you to go away from us.
Yeah, I want you to be here too. Like, it's gonna put distance to us being in different places for one.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that, but it's also like their school's a better school,
right?
Because your schools are funded based on the taxes of the area around them. So, what do the homes look like near the school you're looking at?
Right. So then in this they do a really good job of playing with your expectations of like, we've talked so bad about the South Side High because all our POV characters are from North Side, Riverdale, that we understand the South Side is this seedy place and terrible, but then, and it looks like, oh no, Jughead's going to be messed with, but it's like everybody's having a good time. Like Jughead is you mentioned it today, Jughead is having a better time at Southside than he is at Riverdale.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe he should just stay there because, he's a serpent Nepo baby. So it's like, these are his community, his father's community, and therefore his by proxy.
Right.
And he's playing along because it protects him.
Right.
He doesn't have to be protected at Riverdale. He's not as afraid. I think is part of it.
Gotcha.
I think there's more of he's putting on a persona. He's trying to be like, everything's fine.
Oh, I see.
I'm trying to make everyone feel like everything's fine. See, it's great. It's fine that I'm here. I'm okay. Like, in that way, then no one will worry about him.
Right. I couldn't tell if he was like kind of enjoying being at Southside.
Well, I think part of it is like he is not being judged for his father.
Yes. Yeah. And the class difference.
But which Jughead's the real Jughead?
Right. And maybe we'll be finding out.
Beanie or leather jacket. Or neither. Or both. I'm just glad he has a nice jacket now, because I bet he's cold.
I bet he was too.
Leather jackets are warm.
Very much so.
I think what's really interesting too about this episode is they really focus how the serpents are the others for people to hate. It's like we can just blame the serpents for everything.
Yeah, everything just gets funneled, and it's all happening kind of mostly off screen, but that like Southside people are just being attacked by the wealthy people. We presume is like the wealthy people in Riverdale, even though it was Clifford orchestrating everything. Nobody is going and attacking the Blossoms or even accosting them, but they just freeze them out.
Yeah. And Hiram's coming back, so it'll be interesting to see what that dynamic plays into.
I actually had to question of like Southside and things. So it sounded like FP and Fred went to the same high school. I don't expect
and Betty. And Alice.
Yes, but Alice was from the South Side.
I'm wondering if maybe they added the second school.
Oops, sorry.
Like,
right.
In my parents' generation, my high school and the rival high school we had were all one school with two campuses. Like, and it was like freshmen and sophomores went to one and juniors and seniors went to the other because they ran out of room in the original school. So I could imagine in a smaller town, like until you get to a certain size, you don't build a second school.
Right.
So they've added a third high school in my hometown since I left.
Yeah, that's wild.
Well, I think they're adding it. Yeah, they added it like right when I left. It was personal. They said we need a third one. She took too much of our resources for not coming to school and still getting A's.
It takes a village.
It's stressing us all out.
But yeah, so you can imagine that they drew a line through the
add a bigger divide.
Side. Yeah.
I mean, that's my guess. Like if we're playing with this lore.
No, I think you're right on the money. Which is interesting of like how Alice views Southside versus
it was
FP.
Something to get away from. Well, but was FP also trying to do that and then had to go back because things didn't go right for him?
Right. Like when he hit the wall.
He could never really get away from it. He couldn't untangle himself. He couldn't untangle himself from it. Himself?
Yeah.
You know, in the English, right? I am struggling today with English.
You're in the home stretch.
Thank you. Yeah, I've done really well, I think, considering my brain is not working.
Yeah, you've done great.
Thank you. That's so nice. My only other thing is, and I talked about it a little earlier, like the Archie being a weirdo about dating Veronica to Betty, and Archie still can't make a fucking decision. Jughead still is trying to pull himself away and can't quite fit in, and
thinks he might have found something where he is.
And what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if he fits in with the people who are rejected, does he fit in? Like, I think that it's a really good mind game. Poor Veronica is just like, I guess dad's coming back.
My mom's worse than ever, and my dad's coming back.
Yeah, they're all crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Cheryl, well, she fell into a lake by choice and then was rescued by Archie, who, by the way, is punching that ice and nobody else is helping. Nobody's helping Archie punch that ice.
He's got it.
They just all stand there looking horrified. I'm like, y'all suck in a crisis. These are not the people you want to be with when the plane goes down.
Right. Only Archie.
Only Archie. Betty is forcing people to examine their truths, and she's actually accomplishing it. She makes the most strides and successes in these episodes.
Boy, does she.
But yeah, our main friends, I want to say 5 because Cheryl's always there, you know. Have they grown that much? Like Betty kind of has, but Archie really hasn't. But he has. Boys they're just so dumb. Jughead can't. He has and he hasn't, but he can't really, you know, he's still having a hard time with this whole feelings thing. They're still new to him. He just got there. And
he's got a lot going on too, because he's in a much more unstable situation than the majority.
Mm-hmm.
Except for maybe Cheryl.
Veronica's kind of been the same the whole time. Third act vibes. Mm-hmm. Cheryl's got a lot going on too.
Yeah. I think at least the growth for Veronica is finally the wool coming off from her eyes about her family.
Mm-hmm. But that happens pretty early with the Ethel stuff.
Yeah, right.
Like earlier, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, she backtracks a little about her mom, but then when her mom is like changing, it's like, oh God, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm. Their mom's like, pack a bug out bag and we're gonna find our passports.
Yeah. We're out.
Yeah. And then Fred Andrews gets shot. So now how's our vigilante Archiekins going to handle that?
Mm-hmm. How is, as Cheryl puts it, Dilfy man going to make it out of this?
Will he make it out of this?
Dun, dun, dun.
Well.
Yeah. And we're on to season 2 next week for 2 more episodes. So it's 22 episode season. They expanded the season after the first season. Expanded the episode order after the success of the first season. What I'm trying to say. So we'll just be doing 2 episodes all the way through that season.
Perfect.
Yeah. So you can find this episode on all your audio podcast platforms of choice at Dead Ends. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can see our faces behind some microphones at dead_ends. You can also find us on Blue Sky at dead-ends. And also, please leave us comments, send us emails, talk to us on Blue Sky too about like episodes and things. We love to talk to people. Or if you have a question that you want us to read on the podcast, you can submit it to any of those places there. Or probably the best place for that is to our email at deadendspcast@gmail.com. And we also appreciate any spreading the word of mouth, and giving us 5 stars, subscribe, likes, all that sort of stuff. It helps on the algorithms. You're telling the algorithm this podcast is good, and we appreciate it.
We might question your judgment, but we appreciate it. I'm just kidding. Well,
I think that's it. So
we don't fit in.
We're not gonna fit in.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye. Love you.